Yeah, I was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer.
To my lungs. And then I eventually ended up with metastasis all over my bones. So my spine, my skull, my ribs, I mean, pretty much everywhere in my legs.
When you're fighting cancer, it's really stress on the mitochondria that is also a huge need for treatment as well. It hasn't been spoke of very much. So when you have all this extra stress and depression and anxiety that you're carrying around with you, being able to have a safe way to relieve that stress, I think, is of the utmost importance.
I mean, I'm a doctor, so it's like after getting cancer, I'm passionate about a lot of things, cancer,
I just pray that this comes to more places in the USA.
creating oxidative stress. I mean, I can go on, but when you're in that state of fear, there's no way that you can heal from that.
Hello and welcome. Carrie here from Healing Humanity, the Power of a Proper Human Diet. And today I welcome back Jason, and I welcome for the first time Nee to the channel. Thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it. Just real quick, Jason and I did a video together about a week or two, and it was called, I Was Just Diagnosed with Cancer, Now What? And during that video, it was a great video. It was very informative. I think it's helping a lot of people out. But during that video, Jason told me about a thing going on in Canada. If you have severe depression or advanced stage cancer, you can do psilocybin therapy. And I just want to share a quote. This is what Jason said on that really struck with me was, he said, 80% of the stress and fear of my own mortality is now gone after this therapy. And I was like, I had to pause a second because I'm like, that's a pretty incredible statement. And I'd never really heard very much, if anything, about psilocybin or used as a therapy, or the fact that how it's used in Canada under a therapeutical sort of setting, like a real process around it. So I was interested in learning more for myself, but I was also interested in learning more for others, just potentially to have this as another option or tool in their toolbox, or if nothing else, just an interesting conversation. So I guess with all of that said, Jason, we had you on the channel before. I was going to ask you both maybe to share your background and maybe a little bit of your background info and your story, if you could. So maybe Nee, if we could start with you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Gary, and Jason for introducing us. My name is Nee, and I was diagnosed with sarcoma in 2016. So this was about 8 years ago. It was stage 4 to be with, very rare type of sarcoma. So sarcomas make up only 1% of all cancers, and my subtype makes up about 0.1% of that. So pretty much I hit the lotto with that one. So it originated in my right gluteal region, and then I got removed, it spread to my lungs, and then I eventually ended up with metastasis all over my bones. So my spine, my skull, my ribs, I mean, pretty much everywhere in my legs. So I've been dealing with it for a long time. I've had a lot of successes, and then it just keeps kind of relapsing and just keep coming and going. So, but I've had periods where I've gotten a lot better. For example, about 4 years ago, when I started to do a lot of holistic treatment, because the conventional treatments that I was doing was not working. And this was kind of the stage where I really set out on my spiritual journey as well as my holistic healing. And, with the dietary modifications and the exercising and meditations and work on my emotional health, my mental health, with all of that, I ended up having really great results in my lung tumors, because all of my metastases were stable. So I had a really good few years where I was even but to the point where my oncologist took me off treatment. But after that period, I kind of slacked off a little bit and life went back to normal. I was going through more stress, and a lot of things happened in between that then made my cancer continue to grow again. So now I'm back at the stage where I'm about maybe a year and a half in, to trying to going back to what I did before to try to help and heal myself. And it's definitely working. I've had a lot of challenges along the way, including 2 femur surgeries where I had to put rods in because my tumors were eating through the bone. I just had a craniotomy, so that was back in January because of a rapidly growing skull-base tumor. So I'm recovering from that. And then now I'm just kind of dealing with whatever's left. But I am doing metabolic therapy, like Jason is, and taking some repurposed drugs, supplements, definitely incorporating the diet part, more ketogenic. I did try carnivore for a little bit, but that didn't really work out too well for me. I don't know if I did it correctly though, so that may be something I'll try again later on. But I am eating plants. And so just basically at this point, I'm really trying hard to do everything right and, have a protocol so that I can get better scan results.
That's great. I have more questions, but thank you for sharing that. And Jason, could you give us, just because there's always new people on here, Jason and I did a video together already, but there's probably a lot of new folks out here. So could you do the same and maybe give us a little bit of your background and story?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer in January of 2023. I was advanced stage 4 right away, right at diagnosis, and I went downhill really quickly. I was told I wouldn't make it 12 months. Anyways, I'm here now still today, and it's been an absolute roller coaster ride. Ups and downs, good scans, bad scans. And I most recently had an esophagectomy where they cut out 7 centimeters of my esophagus. They cut my stomach in half and sewed it back together. It's just been a struggle. And when you're dealing with cancer, just like Nee was saying, like 1 minute everything can be good, and the next thing you know, you turn around, everything's not so good. It's just an absolute roller coaster ride full of anxiety and depression. And I think that's what today's video is more about, is how do you deal with that side of it? Because when you're fighting cancer, it's really stress on the mitochondria that is also a huge need for treatment as well that hasn't been spoke of very much. So when you have all this extra stress and depression and anxiety that you're carrying around with you, being able to have a safe way to relieve that stress, I think, is of the utmost importance.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've read actual studies that talk about healing yourself, just how important mindset is for that. I can't even begin to imagine what you guys are going through or the anxiety and stress it causes. So to be able to be like, yeah, just have a better mood and then, your healing's going to go better. It's just a crazy thought. But that was the question I think that prompted this, Jason. I was asking you last time. I was like, what do you feel about mindset for like healing, and does it play into it? And that was when you told me more about this psilocybin therapy. So maybe for those that have never heard of it before, could you just tell us, like, what is psilocybin and what is the therapy?
Yeah, so maybe if it's okay with you, maybe we could go back a step and kind of set the stage for a second on psilocybin. Before everybody jumps the gun and just goes, oh no, Carrie found drugs and clicks off this video, let's just go back for a minute.
Right.
And maybe just set some common ground maybe and find something and start from a place where everybody can agree upon. And so the way I see that is if I'm in a severe car accident and I need emergency surgery, I think everybody can agree that using anesthetics and painkillers in that moment to get that patient through that moment is an adequate treatment. And can you imagine doing a serious operation without anesthesia and putting the client or the patient under? I don't know how we could do that. So that's a serious drug in itself, and it's safely administered in a safe environment. And so if we can all agree there, then we can all kind of move forward, I think, and agree that drugs do have a place. And in this case, psilocybin is a medicine, as far as I can tell at this point in time. I grew up in an extremely conservative family that I had the mindset that this isn't medicine and this is just drugs of abuse, but I never gave it a second to have a conversation. And I was never in a situation where I required such a radical treatment until I was diagnosed with cancer. And that's when I was looking extremely hard for a solution to deal with my illness at the time, which was really the depression and anxiety of the cancer. Um, and another way to look at it is alcohol is a legal drug, and alcohol is probably the most toxic, self-destructing drug out there, and it's extremely addictive, but yet society's okay with it. And for me, I don't know about you, but if I've ever had a major psilocybin experience, have you ever thought, oh, I can't wait to do that again? Or what are your first impressions?
Oh, definitely not. It's not fun. It's no way fun at all. Like you really, really have to prepare for it because I mean, Jason will go into it, but it could end up pretty bad, so it's not for everyone. That's the first thing, is that you really, really have to study it, research it, know what you're getting yourself into, and, talk to a professional and see if it's actually right for you. You don't want to just jump into it. It's not fun. And yeah, most of the time when I feel like I need to do it, it's because I need to do it, not because I want to do it. So.
Now, Nee, you are a doctor, right?
Yes.
Okay. What are the risks of using something like psilocybin that you're aware of? Like, what is something that somebody should maybe look at and go, maybe this isn't an answer for me because I do have higher risks? From your perspective, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, definitely people with backgrounds, like schizophrenia, like psychosis, certain types of psychiatric disorders, or people who haven't been diagnosed yet, but are, predisposed to it. You just never know. So it really, the clinical trials that they have, they screen people because of that reason. So, because it could cause a psychotic break. So in certain groups, it can be very dangerous.
Okay. And so now back to your question, Carrie, what's the process in Canada that I went through to do this legally? According to MAPS, which is, chemo's really wrecked my brain. I have a hard time recalling words. I used to be much more precise with my speech and be able to remember words, but there's MAPS, an institute that studies psychedelics and therapeutic use. What's MAPS stand for? I can't remember. Anyways, they're
I don't know what it stands for either. But
yeah. So according to MAPS, in order to have a psychiatric intervention, there's 3 meetings that a client should go through on a minimum. There's the first meeting that you do the screening and you talk about your situation, and you're really talking to a therapist and a doctor, usually both. In my case, it was both. And in my case, I actually did 3 meetings ahead of time to prepare for the journey, for the experience before I took the medicine. But MAP says you need 1 meeting beforehand to screen and to set your intentions. Then you have the second meeting, which is the meeting in which you take the medicine and you have the experience. And then you have a third meeting following the journey, which is where you talk about the journey you've now written about. It's usually about within a week after the third meeting, and you meditate on it. You do all kinds of things, and you have a psychiatrist or doctor help you incorporate all of the things that you have learned from the experience. Now, the things that you learn in these experiences are so profound. We're not talking about taking 1 little gram of mushrooms here and going to a party. We're talking high dose, like minimum 5 grams heroic dose of psilocybin. When I did mine medically, I've had a few other journeys that were smaller with, they were underground, and I will talk about them later on, but they weren't as professional as getting it approved through Health Canada. But when I did mine high dose, it was 25 milligrams of pure psilocybin. So I wasn't eating mushrooms at all. I was taking a capsule of pure psilocybin. If you were to do it on underground. It's usually eating actual physical mushrooms, and it's usually 5+ grams. So this world doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. You're talking to God. You're going deep. Everything in the back of your psyche is coming forward. I guess I'll put that back to me now. Like, what are your experiences? How far have you gone? And I'm really curious to hear what you learned from it and try to articulate what the benefits are, maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, same, it sounds very similar to your process. I did, mine with a guide, so I have somebody that, because I work with a naturopathic doctor, and she had recommended me to someone, in the US, you just have to be very careful because it's not legal in the United States. So, we had to go somewhere where it was legal. And so I met my guide to see if we were a good fit, because obviously, you want to feel safe. The main thing is that you need to be in the right setting. So they talk a lot about the set and setting, because if you just kind of, randomly go somewhere and you do it on your own, or you're doing it around people who you don't feel safe around, then it could be a very, very bad trip, So you want to really set up, you want to spend a lot of time preparing for it and setting up where you're going to be, and then having a plan with, how to integrate, like you said, because a lot of things you forget. So you really won't take away a lot of it if you, if you're not really like consciously and intentionally trying to learn from it. So with me, I met with my guide. I loved her. I mean, we got along so well. It was like, I definitely knew it was the right thing. And I also seeked it out for the same reason as you, because having cancer is like, it's basically trauma, and before cancer, I was probably the happiest person, and I never had any issues. I never felt depressed or anxious or anything. But suddenly after I got cancer, it was like, everything was wrong. And I knew that it was situational, but I just couldn't stop obsessing over it. And it just constantly was like, thinking about it. That was my life, and I just wanted my life back. It was so hard to deal with that. And I never realized that it was trauma until now. I mean, not now, but like until more recently, that, it really is something that we're going through, that it's, that's so major, and even like the surgeries that we get, or any intervention. I mean, it's like, even if you don't feel traumatized, your body remembers, and we hold a lot of it in our bodies, a lot of our emotions, and we don't even know that. So for me, I went to, meet with her, and then we had like 3 sessions before the journey, and we picked a place, and planned everything out, and wanted me to write down my intentions. And the way that she put it was like, you use words like teach me, show me, and I forget the other one, but I remember that my intentions were like, show me my fears, or like teach me how to heal, like things like that. So I wrote it down, and I was really like, spent a lot of time meditating on it, and just reading books, and journaling, doing a lot of preparation. And I think that really made a huge difference, because doing it without that is not the same at all, because you're just, you're blindly going into it, and you don't really know what you even want, and then you forget everything when you're done. So I, after that, I had the experience with her by my side, and so she was there the whole time. There was a lot of music that was played, and music is like so important. It's like you have to have music with it, and I think it's better. You get a better experience if you wear blinds, so where you're not seeing things, because what it does, psilocybin, what it does is it kind of like, it's like serotonin. It works on the receptors of serotonin. So and serotonin is so needed for everyone, right? And so it kind of opens up your default mode network, or you have your DMN, which basically helps you kind of like hone in and focus. Brain is so vast, and so when we're paying attention to one thing, like if you see a car down the street, you're like, okay, that's a car. You're focusing on that, and you don't see really anything else, even though it's like 1%, like of the world. And so that's what the default mode network is. It helps to kind of like just make you focus, right? But at the same time, you can kind of hone in too much, and then you don't see the bigger picture. So psilocybin kind of helps you open that, and you then have all these other connections, neural connections, and that's why it's helpful for neuroplasticity and all that. I'm kind of like jumping the gun, but to talk about the benefits, but basically, it really opens you up. You have to like it's visually stimulating. It's odd, you can hallucinate and see things, hear things. So I think having the blinds on where you can really go in is a lot better than opening your eyes, because then you're going to be looking at everything and getting distracted. So I did a lot of the journey with my eyes closed. There was just a lot of release of emotions, like that was my biggest problem, that I realized, was that I just didn't know how to feel. Like I didn't know how to feel emotions, and in fact that's why after the cancer, it was so hard for me, because before that I used to just shove down all my emotions by distracting myself, by overachieving, going out, drinking, being a busybody, just constantly filling up my schedule to have things to do so that I wouldn't have to face myself, and after cancer, I was like, I really had to dig deep. I'm like, why am I sick? And why do I have cancer? And that made me really like go down this path. And I realized that I didn't even know how to feel any emotions. And so the psilocybin, it kind of walked me through this whole, like, it literally, I felt each emotion, like anger, love, fear, joy. I mean, it was just like one by one. It was so beautiful, and at each stage, like, it would bring up like some childhood trauma or memory that I completely forgot about, and then it would just like kind of tie in, and it was just like showing me like how to feel this, how to feel that. And that was like my whole trip. It was like one by one going down. And my guide, was there with me. She was holding my hand and, stroking my back, and like if I needed, like, she just kind of like knew intuitively how to help me. It was just crazy. Like, it was like we were connected. And that's why having a really good trained guide is so helpful, because they kind of just know how to help you. And so she just knew what to do. She wrote everything down. She changed the music like exactly when I wanted it to be changed. It was almost like she was reading my mind. It was pretty awesome. And there was a lot of sobbing. There was a lot of physical stuff too. Like my whole body was just like shaking. Like it felt like my nervous system was just like trying to like reset itself. So like it was just a lot of very interesting experiences. So that's the short version of it. But I mean, it was so much more with that.
So the importance of a good guide, I'll tell a story of a bad guide, or not a bad guide, an inexperienced guide. While waiting for approval in Canada, which takes a very long time, I went on a search for somebody that could do this quicker underground. And I found a psychologist who was willing to give it a try, but had no experience in guiding proper psilocybin experiences. And so you can online in Canada from BC, order psilocybin, and they have websites. You just go on and order it. They send it right to your house. And so I ordered, according to her, a couple grams, which is nowhere near enough to have a true spiritual experience, which we definitely should talk about. I have it pulled up over here. I can read what a true spiritual experience is, but a couple grams of a tea. And I didn't tell my wife I was doing that. She knew I was going to see the psychologist, but she didn't know what I was doing. So I boiled up the tea and I drank it. And she knew that she had to drive me to and from the psychologist's house, but she didn't know why. Because, yeah, I probably should have told her, but my wife's an absolute sweetheart. Anyways, we drink the tea and we're talking a couple grams, okay? This is not a powerful experience. There's a guy, Kalindi, that has 30, well, he's unfortunately passed away through COVID, but he was having 30, 40 gram trips, like, of psilocybin. This is 2 grams. And I was completely sober. I thought I was fine. I thought I had enough time before this would hit to make it to the psychologist's house. And this was my very first experience. All of a sudden, the whole ground did this, and it wobbled, and it wobbled, and the whole ground was doing this from way off in the distance. And I'm still at my house. I haven't even left my house yet. My wife doesn't even realize I've done this. And boom, 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 and it just hits me like this. And I was just launched off this planet. And that was only on 2 grams. And so my wife figures out what I was doing, and she was kind of not too happy with me in the moment. But we get in the car, and she knew that we had to do this anyways, and I really thought I needed to do this. And we're driving, and as we're driving, the trees were coming out, and all of a sudden there was no road, and the trees were eating me in a way, and they were sucking me up into themselves. And so here I am being eaten by trees, driving to the psychologist's house that's supposed to be my guide to get me through this. My eyes are open. I'm not going deep. This is total inexperience. This is not the way that you do this. Like, you get above 1 gram, you're not going to a bar, okay? It's that powerful. And my wife pulls over. I said, just pull over, stop driving. And I had to close my eyes and bend over. And I'm like, just go home. I can't do this. I can't do this. Like, I can't. And she just waits a few minutes, and she's amazing. And then she goes, son, you really wanted to do this. This must be important to you. It's probably going to help you. Are you sure you want to go back home? And I just said, no, you're right. Let's get there. And we finished our drive and got to the psychologist's house. And in the meeting with the psychologist, she talked to me the whole time. She wouldn't shut up. And she was trying to bring up all this stuff that I didn't want to talk about. She's on one level. I'm on a different level. I'm not on this planet, even on 2 grams. And I just need to go deep, and I need to experience these emotions that you're talking about, me. And I need to experience all this stuff, and I need to work through it. And I need to let it come out so that I can deal with it, so that I can clean it up. And she's not letting me. She just won't shut up. So that's what a bad guide can do for you, and that's what inexperience can do for you. So it's, as far as I can tell, it's not a good idea, and it's not going to yield the benefits that we're talking about. And that is not the situation that you want to put yourself in. However, it was pretty fun. It was way more fun than drinking a case of beer. Everything, when we were done, when we finally got to drive home, we only met with the psychologist for an hour. So when we left, here I am being driven home on 2 grams. I'm not sure. Everything was so funny and everything was so bright. And at that point, I had calmed down and relaxed into the experience and actually enjoyed it. Like, it was really enjoyable, but that's not the way you want to do that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds horrible. Like, especially if you're trying to go deep and that person's like not, yeah. Because it's almost like the same as like if you were around somebody that, wasn't on it, and then they like didn't know like that you were, yeah. So it can be very disruptive. Yeah, my guide was like so good. She just knew exactly when to be quiet. And she even would leave the room, and give me privacy for certain amounts of time. And then she just knew exactly what to do. So I got very lucky.
Hey, Nee, was there something that inspired you to do this? Like, did you hear from someone else that had a good experience, or how did you learn about it?
Yeah. I mean, I am a researcher. So, I'm a doctor. So it's like after getting cancer, it's like, I mean, actually, the first few years, I really went with conventional. I was like trying to be a really good patient. I didn't want to be my own doctor. I followed all the rules. I'm like, I'm just going to do whatever my oncologist says. And it honestly didn't work out for me very well, and I was very indoctrinated, and I think a lot of doctors are, there are a lot of really good doctors too, but a lot of us are very like this, because we go to med school and this is what we learn and this is how it is and that's just how it's supposed to be. But I married my husband and he's a free spirit. And he's like, always telling me, he's like, why are you always thinking this and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So he's like this, in my ear. So I think a lot of it was like my husband that really, opened my eyes to a lot of these alternative treatments and different ways that I could try to heal. So it was like going down the rabbit hole, because first you research. I think in the beginning I got into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. He was like the biggest influence for me. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he does a lot of meditations, on like just on using the mind to heal the body, basically. But I got into that, and then it was like yoga, then meditation, and that, and then it became more spiritual stuff, and then one thing just kind of leads down to another road. And so psilocybin, I've always known about it. It's not like something that was mysterious to me, but I was way more interested after I had done a lot of meditations and mind work and seeing the power of the mind and just like kind of, I think that was where I thought that the healing would come from. For me personally, that was the biggest factor because, there's people that go more for diet and more for like the supplements and all of that. But for me, like I was like 90%, mind work, because I've seen so much healing from that. And I've seen like miraculous cases of people just spontaneously healing. And so I was so convinced that whatever it was, if I could change my mindset, that my body is just, was just going to follow. And so that's how I ended up getting into, wanting to try something more drastic. And psilocybin, really felt like it was something more drastic, like I wanted that experience, like I wanted this life-changing experience and kind of like wake up, like Jason said, like 80% not fearing death anymore. And, so it really just opened my eyes, and got rid of my fear, and that happened for me as well, was just that I realized that there's so much more to this world that we can't see, so much more that we don't see with the eyes, and we're spiritual beings. So I truly believe that, and I don't know what's going to happen when I die, but it's just like when you have cancer, you want to know, like you just want that peace and that comfort of what will happen when I die, and even if it's just like guessing or making inferences, it's better than just not knowing, being in this like, in this zone of space where you just don't have any purpose. So I've always been so interested in that, and I love psychology and I love everything about the mind. So it was like the perfect type of thing for me to do.
In your regimen, how often are you going to be using psilocybin on a regular basis? What's your goal to incorporate it?
I didn't have a plan, like I don't do it often at all. Like I don't like it because every time, for me, it's like sad, like I always have to face a lot of stuff when I do it, lots of like inner demons and just having to process, because I shut down a lot, I tend to really not, like I tend to ignore a lot of my emotions and all of that. So for me to have to do that, usually it takes time for that to build up. And then when I really feel like, okay, like I need to do this and kind of get a reset, then I'll do it. But I don't have any like specific plans. Maybe
So,
once a year. I don't know.
so that's the psilocybin is and a lot of the psychedelics are Scheduled 1 drugs in the USA. And so what that means is that a Schedule 1 drug is addictive, highly addictive. And believe me, this ain't addictive. There's no addictive trait here. This is not something you'll look forward to. It's something that you do, and every time you go, I don't know if I can do it again. But believe me, time goes on, and when you're depressed or you're having fear of death or you have cancer, or when you're in these situations, this is a real option, and it does clear these demons up. You get to face those demons, clear them up, so you can have that reset and move forward. So number one is addictive, which it's not. Number two, it has no medical benefits, which is an absolute lie. We got Johns Hopkins University. We got psychedelics like psilocybin. They're not just being used in end-of-life and cancer patients. They're being used for depression. In Canada, to do psilocybin legally, you had to have failed two standard treatments like depression pills. Had to have not worked. That's the rule for, and if you've done that, then you can try psilocybin. And 80% of the cases it works for a minimum of 6 weeks for 1 4-hour intervention, which is completely safe. But Johns Hopkins University and the like 80+% results. It was wrote about by Michael Pollan in the TRIP treatment. He did a piece for the New York Times on Johns Hopkins research and end of life. How is it that one substance and 1 4-hour experience can so drastically change the course of someone's own mortality? Like, there's no more depression than that. Like, I don't care how depressed you are. I'm 35 and I was given less than 12 months to live, and this radically changed my course and got rid of that depression. If I can get rid of that depression, it can help so many people. There's things like Ibogaine, which they can use for opiate addiction. And again, I went to a private screening of something called Dosed. It's a documentary that's very good. And they had a neuroscientist speak afterwards. And she proved that what people are on Ibogaine from the Iboga tree in Africa, which is a 36-hour trip, okay? This is the most powerful psychedelic. Like psilocybin, you're 3 or 4 hours, you're good to go. Like, you're done. You get to move on with your day and you're sober. But Ibogaine, 36 hours. But she proved that it actually repaired the opiate receptors in the brain. So people coming down from opiates didn't even have to go through withdrawals. And I mean, we're in an opiate pandemic here. People are dying every day. And we've got something available like Ibogaine. Like, are you kidding me? It can't be used? Alcoholics and using LSD. Again, Johns Hopkins, NYU, all these universities have all the research on using LSD and psilocybin. They're very similar. And alcoholics, like 80% success rate. And I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fabulous program. It works for some people, but I'm guessing it's less than 10%. And if you're in the 10%, good for you. Keep going to your meetings. Like, I'm sure it's working. But what about the other 90% that's not working for you? You could clear up another 80% of that in a proper setting with a proper guide. Like, this is an amazing medicine that can help and benefit so many people. I do have a really interesting question, which maybe ties us back to Carrie's carnivore diet. You talked about serotonin and how psilocybin's processed. Where does serotonin come from, which I find very interesting? Do you know? Me?
Well, yeah, and I'll add something after that. But this serotonin, there's receptors everywhere. Like, it's not just, it's in your brain, but then about 90% of receptors are actually in your gut. So that's why you get all those side effects. Like, you get, appetite, like it controls your appetite, and like people that anxiety, like jitteriness feeling that you get in your stomach, like when you get anxious and stuff like that. That's why you feel it a lot in your gut, and people get like diarrhea and constipation and stuff like that. So serotonin receptors are, all of our bodies, but yeah, it's mostly in the brain and in the gut. And I was just wanting to add to what you were saying before I forget, is that the psilocybin, I mean, there's other types, like mescaline, and then there's like DMT, and then now they do ketamine, ketamine assisted for depression, treatment for depression and all that. So there's a lot of I guess substances that are in the same type of category. So so they're all being researched and studied, which is good. And then the reason why they became illegal was because of the 1960s, after it came out, and then a lot of people were getting in trouble with it, and using it wrong. So now it's making its resurgence, which is great, and I hope that the research will go far, and I think it's definitely moving forward, and so hopefully a lot of people will get more benefits from it. From my personal, I forgot to mention that what I did, the trip with the guide, I actually had metastasis in my spine at the time that was really bothering me. That was like one of my biggest problems when I decided to do it, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to do it. I had this huge one in my sacrum. It was about like almost 3 centimeters, and it was causing me a lot of pain. Like I was dealing with that. I had a bunch in my lumbar spine as well, but it was limiting my activities, and I have young kids, and at the time I couldn't even bend down to, bend over. I couldn't pick them up. It was miserable. And so one of my intentions was like really to heal that area, that was the most problematic for me. And I mean, it just like took me down the whole road of like why I have a metastasis there, and I don't know if you guys know about chakras and stuff like that, but it's like kind of like these energy centers, where disease kind of collects in your body. So there are some people, a lot of people who write books that say, like Louise Hay, and there's like Dolores Cannon. There's some people that talk about how when your emotions, get trapped in certain parts of your body, it can kind of result as like stagnant energy, and then that's how you end up getting sick in some way. So I was almost like mapping out all of my tumors in my body and kind of like correlating it to the organ or the system or whatever emotion that was I was dealing with, and so after I worked out that whole trip, my spine actually healed. I mean, I don't know if that's what did it, but the tumor went away, and it hasn't come back since, and it was pretty incredible. It was like a few months after that, but I was doing a lot of other work in combination with that, but I remember after that journey, I think my scans 3 or 6 months later, it was significantly improved. And so I don't know what did it, but I do a lot of things, but I know that it helps me physically, whenever, because it's just like getting rid of that mental aspect, the mind part. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I think I read a book once. It was talking about just the amazing healing people can have just from mindset. It's incredible. I think they've even done some studies on it. It'd be really interesting for psilocybin treatment. Like if you had 1 million people diagnosed with advanced stage cancer, and 1 million people took this and they were in a good mood, and they didn't, like Jason said, the stress and fear of mortality is now gone versus the other didn't. You almost have to think like those outcomes are going to be better, even if the outcomes weren't better, or like the length of their life wasn't better, or things like that. Just the fact that you're happy and you're living life in the moment. I mean, that was remarkable. When I was talking to Jason last time, he's just like, I'm spending time with the family, and I'm good. Like I'm good. And I think most people in that situation wouldn't be.
Yeah, no, it's so true, because at least your quality of life is better, and like you're not constantly in this like chronic state of stress, which is really what cancer patients deal with. I think it's just there's so much fear in it. And when you have fear, I mean, that physiologically your body's releasing all these stress hormones, and, that's affecting your mitochondria, creating oxidative stress. I mean, I can go on, but when you're in that state of fear constantly, it's like being constantly stressed, and there's no way that you can heal from that. It's like, it's very, very difficult. Even if you're doing all the right things, you could be taking all the right supplements, you could be having like a perfect diet. Some people over exercise, like even they can make exercise stressful. So like, as a cancer patient, it's so important to be happy. I know it's so hard because like that's my biggest struggle, is finding joy, and because I get so serious. Like I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna be a perfectionist. Like I'm gonna be the best cancer patient. I'm gonna fight it with this and this and this, and this is like my to-do list. And then I realized like, wow, okay, like, am I trying to heal, or am I kind of like, what am I even doing? And so I have to like constantly remind myself that it's okay not to get it perfect, and it's okay to mess up once in a while, or cheat, like have a cheat meal. But as long as you really are finding joy and you know how to get yourself back and you're not stuck in that rut, then you're good. And so that's what I'm continually working on. Yeah.
That's great.
Sarah, did you know that serotonin was so linked to the gut, Carrie?
I did. I wouldn't have known that otherwise, but interestingly, we did a video with Dr. Tony Hampton, and he mentioned that in a short, and it was such a remarkable statement. Like, he's like, I'm a doctor and they never teach me nutrition, and here serotonin develops in the gut for the most part. And when he said that, it really stuck in my brain. So if I hadn't heard him say that, I wouldn't have known it, though. No, that's like a crazy thing to think about.
And that's why I think carnivore diet can help so much with depression, because it cleans up the gut health. And that's how psilocybin works, is it's processed into psilocybe, which is then processed through the gut and the bowels into serotonin, and it just overloads your body with serotonin, which is now it's naturally produced, which is what makes it so safe. So the LDL-50, like, of psilocybin and LSD and the psychedelics, your standard psychedelics, is actually unknown. They did do something. If you ever want to read a cool story, there's something called the elephant who died from acid. I think it's something like that. You can pull it up sometime when you're free. Anyways, they did a study. They wanted to figure out how much acid an elephant, like, to find out the legal dosage of acid the elephant can take. And eventually the elephant did die. They gave it this massive dose of LSD. Unfortunately, it was an inconclusive study for the poor elephant, because they had to give it so much tranquilizers to keep it under control while it was tripping on the acid.
Wow.
So they don't actually know, like, the lethal dose of these psychedelics is actually unknown. It's extremely high, like to the point that you couldn't eat that much to actually have to pass away. They're extremely safe as long as you have a good setting and you know what you're doing. And so I would even challenge that if you do, I'm starting to challenge it. I don't know where I stand on this. Like, I'm challenging internally. But if you've been through the process and had some experiences and you do know what you're doing, I would almost push back and say, can you just go out alone? Like, oh my God, again, can't chemo brain. Forget his name. Can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Doesn't matter, but he talks about the heroic dose, and you go in alone and you go into your basement into a dark place by yourself and you take 5 grams of mushrooms regularly, maybe quarterly or semi-annually, just to have that reset and that serotonin reset. And you're just in a dark space alone with some music, and you have this experience as part of your regular regimen. So I'm almost pushing back to say, if you do know that you're safe to take it, what do you think, Nee? Like, is there a certain point where you think you could do it alone, like self-administer? I know, well, you're a doctor, so you probably shouldn't say, but...
Well, I mean, like, I definitely think, you could do it alone. It's just, I mean, I think the experience would be very different. as having a guide, because I mean, alone, you're kind of just swimming in your own thoughts and stuff, and nobody's really like kind of keeping track of you. And it's hard to keep track of yourself when you're doing that. So I don't know how helpful it would be, like in comparison. I mean, I'm sure it's safe to do, like if you know how it feels, the dose, and you're in a safe space and you have like your partner or somebody that can check on you, but I don't know if it would be as beneficial. That's the only thing. Yeah. I mean, you could probably prep for it, I'm sure.
Right. I kind of asked Jason about this last time, and I think I know that it's a hard question to answer, but well, maybe if I phrase it differently, is there any of the expectations you had going into it? Was it anything like those expectations, or was it you just can't even describe it and it was nothing like you prepared or expected for?
Very.
You go ahead.
You go ahead. You want me to answer, Carrie, or
Either? Yeah, sure.
There is no expectations. You go in there, and the internal healer, they call it, it knows what you need best. So you set your intentions and what you want to accomplish, but what you see is just so life-altering and mind-altering. It's so profound. And the internal healer is going to take you down the path and on the journey that you need to go down. You're going to get out of it what you need, not what you want. And that's what Nee said, that she has to face her demons every time she does it. And those demons are probably always different. And she's likely unprepared for those demons every time, because they're just things that from your past, trauma, all sorts of things that you have to face and clean up.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, it's like constant surprises, because I mean, it kind of brings up memories that like memories came up. Like, I don't even remember this. Like, I couldn't believe that was, that affected me so much. Like, I remember, I think I saw like my cat eating a mouse or something when I was in Vietnam, and I was like a little child. I was born there, so we had cat house, and I was like playing with the cat, and I saw it like just chasing a mouse around, attacking it. But I forget like how it affected me, but it was just like a memory that came up, and I was just like, oh, I didn't realize that A plus B equals C, and so your mind kind of like does these connections that you would just never ever think about, otherwise. And yeah, so you get surprises constantly.
The way Michael Pollan described it, which I thought was brilliant, was that if you take a toboggan and go down a hill, you create a rut. And every time you go down that hill, and as you're wandering back and forth, that toboggan will find that rut again, and it will make it deeper and bigger and bigger. And as you constantly go down, the toboggan will just make, eventually there's no way to go down that hill without going into that rut and being stuck in it. And that's the way your brain works, is you get stuck in these patterns of, just neurologically speaking, where it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so you get stuck in these patterns that are positive or negative in a lot of cases, right? And so having this psilocybin is like a snowfall. And so now it's snowing, and all of a sudden those ruts are now filled back in. And so when you put that toboggan back to the top of the hill and you go down, you can find a new pathway forward. And I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, that's like neuroplasticity. Yeah. So and that's how you can rewire your brain. And that's how you can do it without psilocybin. That's how people do it with meditations and stuff like that. That's why they say like whatever your thoughts are, and like, because you have like 80,000 thoughts a day, and like 60, about 60 to 80% of them are negative, and you don't know what you're thinking or saying most of the time. So in order to change the way that you're thinking, and to change those routes, those little roads that you have paved for yourself, and to change the course, you have to like be so consciously aware of what you're thinking and what you're doing, and then you have to almost be like a different person, in order to change. And so that's why change is so hard, because you want to be in the familiar. So even if it's a negative thing, even if it sucks and you're depressed and you hate it, but it's still familiar, and we just don't want to step into the unknown. So, I did a lot of work with that, doing more meditations, because what you do when you meditate is that you're slowing down your brain waves, So when you're in an active brainwave state, you're not able to really work on your subconscious mind and all that, and to rewire your brain. So that's why it's very similar, but it's just psilocybin is obviously something you can take, and it's a very fast process versus meditation, which takes hours and months and years.
Right.
But it's a great way that you can also use if you can't get your hands on psilocybin.
Have either of you done like talk therapy with anyone before? I was doing some research on this, and someone was saying doing a psilocybin journey is almost like getting 100 years of that at one time. Is that not accurate to you guys?
Yeah.
Maybe more.
Wow.
Talk therapy doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, it's very. It's, even if you find the right person, the person, because you're what's wrong. I think like a lot of us, like, we know our problems and we know what we need to fix, and just talking about it. In fact, I think it makes me worse. Like more. It's like then I'm talking about my problems and I'm reminded of my problems, but there's no tool for me to fix it. And so I'm just kind of airing it out, and then that's it. And it's like, no, and you get nothing done. So, so talk therapy, it doesn't work for me. I don't know for other people.
It doesn't work. But using the psilocybin, as long as I have a spiritual experience, it creates instant relief, like instantly. Like you come out the other side like 3-4 hours after, like it's instant relief. The stress in my back is gone. Even like it's just everything. It's just you let go of everything, and you just are able to reset and move forward. And you have just this deep appreciation and unity for everyone and everything around you. It's beautiful.
Well, because it destroys your ego, right? So it breaks down that ego defense. And so then it's not just about you anymore. It's like about everything else, and you see everything else, and you see the bigger picture and all of the connections. Like the one thing that I always feel is gratitude, like whenever I'm doing it, it's just like for everybody that's connected to me, like from the animals to the humans to the like everything in our world. So it's just, I think it like brings that feeling that that there's more than just you, and that we're all like kind of a collective whole, and we that's what life is about those connections. So it just makes you feel really good, like really supported.
That's awesome.
So do you want to know what constitutes a spiritual experience to generate healing from the psychedelic experience?
Yeah.
Number one, conscious unity, the boundaries of where you perceive your individual identity to begin and end completely vanish, otherwise known as ego death. Instead, you're left with a boundless and infinite union with all that is surrounds you. 2, there is no time or space. Pretty self-explanatory. When you're in a big mushroom trip or a psilocybin trip and you take the medicine, time doesn't exist. Objective reality, without a discernible identity comes a sense of greater objectivity. It's though you're experiencing a much more interactive and profound reality. Everything doesn't just feel perfect. Everything is initially perfect. Gratitude, believe me, you have an extreme sense of gratitude, and you feel overwhelmed with gratitude and joy a majority of the time, which is really good when you're depressed. Life is seen as sacred. Oh my God. When you have this experience, you love your life and you're so happy to be here. And even if you're going through cancer and end of life, you suddenly realize, even if you have 3 months left, you're so lucky. Like you really find this deep appreciation. And I wish I knew this before I had cancer, because having those feelings are amazing. You understand the nature of paradox. That one's a long one. I'm not going to read it. It's not really so important. The experience is indescribable. If you have an indescribable psilocybin journey, it's probably quite spiritual. The experience is temporary. The very nature of the mystical experience being the key word here, is its transience. Eventually, you end up returning back to your habitual way of life, but the experience changes something deep inside of you. And then the last one is probably the most important one. The experience is life-changing. After experiencing such a state of ineffable divine truth, suddenly death isn't as scary as it used to be, and the beliefs or ambitions that you once held to be so important often tend to lose their meaning. In fact, the mystical experience often awakens a deep thirst to try to integrate as much of the experience back into one's regular everyday life as possible, and begins or deepens the spiritual awakening process. And that is really the big one. The experience is life-changing. That's the big one. And it is. It completely will reroute the course that you're on in a positive way. This is not a negative way. Even a bad trip, they say, are the best trips, because now you got the worst out of the back of your psyche. You get an opportunity to clean it up, which is why you need the support system around you. Because if you do have a bad trip, and really every trip can be a bad trip, even it can be orgasmic and fun, don't get me wrong. Like, that does happen at certain points in time. Like, it can be very enjoyable. Like, it's not bad. Like, you can have really good, positive, fun experiences. But you can face some horrible demons too, and those are the best ones and the most rewarding in a lot of cases.
Wow. So is this like one of the most profound experiences you think you've ever had?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what is your kind of thought or goal with this? You're so passionate about this. You just want to get the word out so other people have this as an option, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am very passionate about it. I mean, I'm passionate about a lot of things, cancer. That's why I have my YouTube channel where I want to share all these things. But, like, I've tried a lot of stuff, and, and I know that people all have their opinions. So I'm kind of like, a little bit hesitant to take that. I'm done and trying. And so I kind of pick and choose and stuff. So I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to do it on your channel, Carrie. Because I really do think it like people would benefit so much from it if it is the right thing for them, and I do want to spread more awareness and just make sure that people are safe, because that's the main thing, is that I don't want anybody to get hurt from this, because I have heard of, bad stories. And so that's not like it doesn't happen. And so, knowing the benefits of it, I do want people to be more aware if they're not. And, so that's really like just my goal in terms of cancer, because I think everything that you have, that all the tools that we have that we can use, we should use them, because fighting cancer is not a joke. It is not fun. It's not easy. There were so many people suffering, and the rates of cancer is rising. And I feel like people are just so lost, and, they're so hopeless and fearful and sad. And it really breaks my heart, and because I'm going through it, and if I feel this way, I don't know other people feeling. So I really just want to make any difference, in spreading anything that I know that can help.
Yeah, I think really the reason these medicines have been banned was the war on drugs. We had the 1960s, like you said, Nee, and it was the hippies. The hippies were coming up, and they were using acid and psilocybin, and they were having a lot of fun with them. And they were protesting against the Vietnam War. So the government, in response, unfortunately, they were doing amazing studies using with alcohol addiction, depression, all kinds of fabulous work actually at the time, using LSD. And the government was actually funding them and having tremendous success. But as a way to get back at the hippies, they said, you know what? This is now a Schedule 1 drug. You're out. You're getting gone. Stop protesting the war in Vietnam. And unfortunately, we've never looked back and changed it. And it's really sad. I'm fortunate enough to live in Canada where I can do this legally through the government. I've been approved and I get to have a proper professional guide now where I can have high dose psilocybin in a safe place with a safe setting with an appropriate process to incorporate what I've learned. So I'm very fortunate. And I just pray that this comes to more places in the USA. There are psychedelic drug companies that are now traded on the public stock exchange, for example, MindMed. So you can actually buy stock in psychedelic drug companies in the USA. I believe it's traded on the NASDAQ, actually. So there you go. We're almost there.
Yeah, no, they're getting there. There's a lot of clinical trials, so maybe look into that too, see if you can enroll in a clinical trial that's happening right now, in the U.S.
Right. And if someone from the U.S. wanted to learn more, are there good resources or somewhere we could send them to figure out more?
MAPS, MAPS, that's like the big psychedelic research. It might be Canada based, but it's still online. You can just go to MAPS website. They're big, and I'm pretty sure they're in the States as well. Like MAPS is the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like those big names you mentioned, like Michael Pollan, he wrote a book. I mean, there's a lot of books that are written about it. But yeah, that's one of the ones that I read.
The Trip Treatment, it's called, isn't it? No, that was his article. Michael Pollan's book. Oh my gosh, it's on top of my tongue. It's an amazing book. I listened to the audio version, and it's him actually speaking, which is really cool.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of books on the topic, from the researchers. That
is great. I'm going to, we put together this cancer action plan, which was just like, hey, here's some other options. Here's some regimen. Jeff, our buddy Jeff is on there, his regimen he uses for cancer. So I'm going to add this to it. The whole idea with the cancer action plan was just like, it seems sadly like when most people are diagnosed with cancer, they're just given one option. Like you can go do chemotherapy and this is it. So we have links to Professor Seyfried's work on there. And I just want to have it. Like if I was diagnosed with cancer, I would just want to have the options. I'd want to be able to make the choice myself. Here's some different tools in the toolbox you could choose from. I'm not saying that you have to do these. So I'm going to definitely add some of these links to that page. I can't believe we've been talking for an hour already. I was going to say, anyone watching this, check out Nee's channel. I'm going to have a link in the description. Jason's channel. And for both of you, I open invite if we want to do another one of these, because I could talk about this longer. This is like fascinating to me. Like I said, I had depression and anxiety most of my adult life, and I wish I would have had this as an option. I just went down into a pharmaceutical cesspool for years and years that did absolutely nothing for me. And what I'm learning doing this documentary more and more is it's way worse now than it was for me 15, 20 years ago. There's something like 1 billion people right now suffering from mental health disorders. And that number's probably sadly way underreported because a lot of people just don't go in to get help in the first place. But and then the cancer numbers too, it's crazy. Younger and younger people are getting it. It's happening more and more. So I mentioned you guys earlier, I'm interviewing Professor Seyfried. I'm going to ask him a little bit about this too, just in terms of mindset. Like, has he done any research into that sort of thing, mindset and cancer? And so
stress and mitochondria, like that has to be a link, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, and the gut health too is like, like there's a connection there with your mental health. So that's like a big thing, that people don't realize that, whatever their gut health is, it affects your mind. So everything affects your mind.
Yeah.
And you're so right on the anxiety and depression. I mean, I still work, I work as a primary care doctor. So, I mean, half my patients are anxious and depressed, and that's what they come in for, and it's sad, and they're all young, like very young people. So it's surely on the rise. Yeah.
Yep. Oh,
we lost her.
Oh, let's see here. Oh, I didn't kick you out. I don't know what happened there. It just dropped.
Yeah.
You were saying that depression was surely on the rise when you got caught.
Yeah. No. Oh, it got cut off after that. Okay.
Yeah.
No, saying that I work as a primary care doctor, and so most of my patients that I see, they're just or depressed, or they're on some sort of SSRI or medication, and then everybody's, especially ADHD. So I mean, these drugs are very they come with a lot of side effects, and they may be a little bit effective sometimes at best, but I've seen some pretty terrible side effects, including like suicidal thoughts, and so these drugs are really dangerous, and they're being handed out like candy.
Right. And there's that's one thing I wanted to say too. Those drugs, which are compounds, they're synthetic. That's what people are. They're perfectly fine with those. But then we're talking about natural mushrooms, and there's this stigma. That would be one thing I'd encourage my audience to think about, because I don't blame anyone. I kind of had it too initially when we're talking about mushrooms. There's this initial stigma, and there really shouldn't be. We're talking about this being used as a medicine that's really helping people incredibly. It's not like Jason and me are doing this to go off and have some fun. It's not like a recreational drug by any means whatsoever. So that's something that we got to change in society too. Like you guys were saying, ever since the big drug wars and everything, there's these stigmas, and now they're hampering. Like there's people out there that are sick that could be benefiting from these medicines that aren't, because everyone's so scared of them and they don't even know what they're talking about, frankly, in some cases. And then the SSRIs, those are just fine. The doctor prescribed those to you. Backwards.
All anti-cancer world,
Yeah.
There's a lot of like good repurposed drugs, and that's like a whole other topic, that could be used.
Yeah.
Aren't being used. So.
Yep. Well, this has been great. You guys have an open invite anytime. I really appreciate you both sharing this. I think it's going to help a lot of people out. And I'd love to talk more, whether we talk on this some more or just cancer in general, metabolic therapy. We could definitely do some more videos. My whole goal is just to try to help people that are hopeless out there in the world. And there's a lot of hopeless people, but I think this information is going to inspire and help them. So anything we can do there. So shout out again, Jason and Nee. Thank you for joining me. Check out their links. I'll have both of their links in the description below. Go subscribe to their channel. Go watch them. And thank you both so much. You guys want to shout anything else out before we wrap it up? Or mention anything?
No, you out.
Oh.
You're awesome. Yeah, and your channel's awesome too. I actually found you like a couple weeks before I met Jason. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, I was like, oh, you not care. It was very random.
Awesome. Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Nate, too, for standing up and saying something about all the stigma and stuff, and actually speaking out, especially given your background and your profession, and at least saying something, because that really took a lot of courage. And thank you very much. And thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, thank you, Nee. I've said that before. I've talked to a couple of doctors and experts just like in the carnivore space. And even those guys, I'm like, they're totally going against the grain, and it's a really hard thing to get up and speak out about it, but you're going to help a lot of people, which is kind of that's why a lot of people became a doctor, right? To help heal people. Sometimes you can do it a lot more with your words if you're brave enough to share it. So thank you so much, Nee, for doing that.
Thank you both.
All right. Thank you, Jason, too. Thank you for arranging this. Let's talk again soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.